I'm Jayson Jorgensen. It is once again time for Husker Chat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment as we talk Husker football with Sean Callahan of HuskerOnline. Nebraska's coming off a bye week with a big home game coming up against a much improved Illinois squad. Sean, as always, thanks for the time.
Hey, it's great to be on. Big game this week, Jayson. Thank you.
A huge game. Each team's coming off of a bye. Nebraska with that close loss to Purdue. If they could have only gotten a defensive stop late, maybe you give the ball back to the red-hot offense. You might have been able to pull off the upset. What's your kind of sense of this one as we get set to see if Nebraska can pull off a big upset?
Yeah, there's a lot that jumps out about this matchup. Number one, Chase Brown leads the country in rushing yards at running back, so they've got a premier NFL running back. Nebraska hasn't seen a back like Chase Brown all year. So I think how will they match up against a back that is, by far the best they've seen. And this has been a defense, Jayson, that has struggled for Nebraska at times this year. And then the other thing, the defense for the Illini, they're number one in the country in total defense. They're number one in yards allowed in total or points allowed as well. So they average less than 9 points a game. The most points they've allowed is 23 on the season. So that they can run the ball and they can stop you. I mean, that's a pretty good recipe in the Big Ten, and that's why Illinois right now is in the driver's seat to win the Big Ten West.
Certainly have to be impressed with what Brett Bielema has done. Some guys are just good coaching other people's players, and he's done this before.
Yeah, obviously at Wisconsin, 3 Rose Bowls there. He knows the league. He's from the state of Illinois. This was, when you go back to when they hired Lovie Smith, that felt like a great hire. Former Bears coach at Illinois, but it was a disaster. I mean, Lovie did bring in some good players, so I think we've learned that. He just didn't know how to really operate and run a college team. And I don't know how fully invested he was. Where Brett Bielema, this is his opportunity. He sat out some time after Arkansas, and that just wasn't a good fit for him and down there. And he's back where he belongs. And he's got Illinois. I mean, if you're in Madison and Iowa City right now, you're pretty worried that Brett Bielema now all of a sudden has Illinois as a real contender in the West here. But we only have one more year of the West. They're gonna probably dissolve the West after the 2023 season. But he could get his team in the championship game maybe the next 2 years the way he's coached them up so far.
Let's talk about the Huskers and the offense. The last time we saw them on the field, Trey Palmer was having a historic night. You talk about a breakthrough performance. I thought your question with Mickey Joseph today was interesting. You asked Mickey if Trey was as fast as any of the receivers he's had, and he said, yeah, he's the fastest guy he's ever coached. And
you never know how a coach is going to respond to that, and he was very honest about it. But I was curious because Trey has the track speed. And, sometimes it doesn't always translate. You've called a lot of football players, Jayson, that, were state champions, but they don't look as fast when they play the game of football. Trey, as we know, is fast in whatever he does. I did an interview with him in the summer. He was a great baseball player even. And I think in his life, he maybe got thrown out one time stealing a base. So he's always typically the fastest guy in whatever he does. And, how will they get him free? When everybody knows what he's going to do well, how will they disguise Trey Palmer? How will they free him up when they know that's what you want to do?
How do you see Nebraska getting their running game back on track? Because if they're going to have any chance in this game, they've got to find a way to be multiple on both sides, at least multiple offensively. They're not going to be able to get it done just through the air.
Well, they're at home. And remember, they've been on the road the last 2 weeks. It's harder to communicate and make checks and they played in 2 pretty full stadiums at Rutgers and Purdue. So I think the communication should be better at home this week for the offense. And they're home for 2 weeks in a row. The weather should be nice. I mean, I think a lot of things, they're coming off a bye. They've had time to really think about things. So I think there's a lot right there that should put them in a better position this week. But they've got to get Anthony Grant going. The time of possession, they're not going to win that very often with their offense right now because of the big play threat they have, but they need to get the ball more than 18 minutes to have a chance to win a game like this.
I think another interesting aspect in this game is how does Illinois handle this? All of a sudden, they're the team ranked in the top 25. They come in 17th. This is the game they're expected to win, and the Huskers have nothing to lose.
Yeah, for 2 weeks, they've heard how great they are now, and I mean, who would have thunk, Nebraska, Illinois, national televised game on ABC at 2:30 when we were kind of drawing up the preseason games. So this game is a lot bigger for both teams. It's big for Mickey Joseph because we know what it means for him, and we know what it means for Nebraska's season if the Huskers were able to pull out a win. But it's big for Illinois because if they get this win, they will now own the head-to-heads over Wisconsin, Iowa, Minnesota, and now Nebraska, with Illinois still having to play Northwestern and Purdue, but they would almost all but have secured the West. Now, they do have a game against Michigan. Their lone loss, as we know, is against Indiana. So they've got a tough game still on their schedule, but, man, they would really be in a great position to win the West with a 7-2 record and hold tiebreakers, or even a 6-3 and have all the tiebreakers if they get this win over Nebraska.
A big portion of your job is following recruiting. The Huskers have picked up some decent recruiting news of late. How do you feel Mickey Joseph and the staff are doing, trying to keep this class together as much as they can with nobody really knowing who's going to be leading the program?
Well, the formula has been pretty simple. Get the local guys, and they've gotten 6 of them now committed. That ties the most for the internet era, which dates back to 1999 of in-state recruits. And, it's hard to trace it before that because there was a 95 scholarship rule in the mid-90s. But they have a chance to get 7 in-state recruits if Mason Goldman from Gretna jumps on board. But Malachi Coleman is the number 1 ranked player in the country, or in the state of Nebraska. He's really a top 150 to top 100 guy, depending on what service you go by on the rankings. But 6'5", over 200 pounds, runs a 10.4 in the 100, and jumps 41 inches. You can figure out how to play him somewhere. And he's a very, very talented young man. And getting him for Mickey was a real big coup.
All right. We'll see how it shakes out on Saturday. Certainly would be great if Nebraska could pull off the stunner, that's for sure.
All right. Hey, thank you, Jayson.
You bet. That was Sean Callahan joining us as he always does every week for Husker Chat. It's brought to you by Acres Equipment. For Husker Chat, I'm Jayson Jorgensen.